The crystalline hum of Nexus Station's power core had become as familiar to Marcus Chen as his own heartbeat. 3 years of maintaining the delicate energy matrices that kept this remote research facility operational had given him an intimate knowledge of every vibration, every fluctuation in the massive structures that converted raw stellar energy into usable power. Today, however, something felt different. Marcus wiped perspiration from his forehead as he recalibrated the secondary harmonic stabilizer. His dark hair stuck to his skin despite the station's environmental controls, and his standard-issue maintenance jumpsuit clung uncomfortably to his lean frame. The protective gauntlets he wore made fine adjustments challenging, but working with crystalline energy matrices required every precaution. Calibration complete on Grid 7, he called out to his partner. "Zira, can you verify the resonance readings?" Zira Voss didn't respond immediately. She stood at the primary control console, her imposing figure silhouetted against the soft blue glow of the holographic displays. At nearly 7 feet tall, with midnight black skin that seemed to absorb the ambient light and muscular build that spoke of both strength and grace, she commanded attention without trying. Her silver hair was braided with intricate metallic threads that caught the light as she moved, and her pale violet eyes held an intensity that could make even veteran spacers uncomfortable. As a Kytherian, Zira possessed natural abilities that made her invaluable for security work. Her species had evolved on a high-gravity world with dangerous predators, resulting in enhanced reflexes, incredible strength, and an almost supernatural awareness of their surroundings. Her form-fitting black uniform, designed for both protection and mobility, highlighted her alien grace while the energy blade holstered at her hip reminded everyone that she was far from decorative. "Zira?" Marcus tried again, noting the slight tension in her shoulders. She turned to face him, her expression as carefully neutral as always. "The readings are within acceptable parameters," she said in her deep, melodious voice that carried the slight accent of her homeworld. "Though you could improve efficiency by adjusting the primary matrix alignment." Marcus nodded, making the adjustment. They had worked together for nearly 2 years, ever since his previous partner had transferred to a cushy posting on Luna. Zira was professional, competent, and utterly dedicated to her duties. She was also, Marcus had to admit, fascinating in a way that he found increasingly difficult to ignore. "Thanks for the catch," he said, focusing on the controls to avoid staring. "Have you tried the new hydroponic vegetables from the botanical lab? That new researcher, Tessa, has worked miracles with the growing systems." The sound of shattering crystal filled the maintenance bay. Marcus spun around to find Zira standing over the remains of what had been a delicate sensor array worth more than his annual salary. Crystalline fragments glittered across the floor like deadly confetti, and warning lights began flashing throughout the chamber. Her pale eyes blazed with an emotion he had never seen in them before, raw, burning fury. "Zira, what?" "Equipment malfunction," she said through gritted teeth, though her voice carried a tremor that suggested anything but mechanical failure. "I will file the appropriate reports." Without another word, she strode from the bay, her boots crunching on the destroyed sensor fragments. Marcus stood alone among the blinking warning lights, completely bewildered by what had just transpired. In all their time working together, Zira had never shown anything beyond professional courtesy. She was efficient, reliable, and so emotionally controlled that Marcus had sometimes wondered if Kytherians even experienced emotions the same way humans did. The explosion of rage he had just witnessed seemed completely out of character. Marcus spent the remainder of his shift cleaning up the damaged equipment and filing incident reports. The sensor array would need to be completely replaced, and the secondary systems would have to compensate until new parts arrived from the inner colonies. He found himself glancing toward the bay entrance every few minutes, half expecting Zira to return with an explanation, but she never appeared. When his shift ended, Marcus made his way to the station's central hub, a large common area that served as both dining hall and social center. The space featured large viewports that offered a stunning view of the nearby star cluster that gave Nexus Station its name. Tables and seating areas were arranged to accommodate various species, from standard human chairs to the elevated platforms preferred by the tall, thin Altarians. The facility housed roughly 200 researchers, engineers, and support staff from a dozen different worlds. Most were there to study the unique properties of the crystalline formations found throughout this system, which had proven to be an incredibly efficient source of clean energy. Marcus had initially signed on for the generous pay and the chance to work with cutting-edge technology, but he had found himself genuinely fascinated by the work. "Rough day?" asked Finn Reeves, sliding into the seat across from Marcus's table. Finn was one of the few other humans on the station, an anthropologist who studied interspecies cultural dynamics. His sandy hair was perpetually disheveled, and his clothes always looked like he had slept in them, but his knowledge of alien customs had prevented more than one diplomatic incident. Marcus stabbed at his reconstituted protein with more force than necessary. "You could say that. Let me guess. Voss?" Marcus looked up sharply. "How did you?" "The whole station knows by now," Finn said with a slight smile. "Maintenance is furious about that sensor array. That's military-grade Kytherian technology she destroyed. Takes months to replace." "Great," Marcus muttered. "So now I'm known as the guy who somehow drove the Ice Queen to property destruction." Finn's eyebrows rose. "Ice Queen? Is that really how you see her? What else would you call her?" "She's professional to the point of being cold, never shows emotion, barely engages in conversation beyond what's necessary for work." Marcus shook his head. "Today was the first time I've ever seen her lose control, and I have no idea what caused it." "What were you talking about when it happened?" Marcus thought back. "Nothing important. Just mentioned the new botanist and how impressed I was with her work." He paused. "Why?" Finn was staring at him with an expression of disbelief mixed with something that might have been pity. "Marcus, tell me you're joking." "About what?" "You mentioned another female to a Kytherian who's been courting you for months, and you're surprised she reacted badly?" The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. "Courting? What are you talking about? Zira has never shown the slightest interest in." "Are you serious right now?" Finn interrupted. "She's been practically broadcasting her intentions in every way her culture allows. The protective behavior, the gift-giving, the territory marking." "Territory marking?" Marcus was thoroughly confused now. "She's adjusted your environmental controls twice in the past month, hasn't she? Made sure your workspace is at the optimal temperature and lighting? The systems were malfunctioning. She's brought you rare crystal samples from restricted areas of the station. We work with crystalline technology. She stood between you and that drunk Altarian trader at last month's supply exchange when he got aggressive." Marcus remembered that incident. The trader had been sampling too much Terran whiskey and had started pushing Marcus around over some perceived slight. Zira had appeared seemingly out of nowhere, placing herself between them with a look that could have frozen stellar plasma. The trader had sobered up immediately and offered profuse apologies. "That was just her doing her job," Marcus protested, though his conviction was wavering. Finn shook his head. "In Kytherian culture, those are all classic courtship behaviors. Providing for a potential mate's comfort, offering gifts that demonstrate your worth, and protecting them from threats. She's been all but announcing her interest for anyone who understands her cultural signals." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. "And I just casually mentioned how impressed I was with another woman. Not just any woman. A human woman who's been working with life-sustaining plants, essentially advertising her abilities as a provider." Finn's expression was sympathetic now. "From Zira's perspective, you just told her that you prefer someone else who's better at ensuring survival." "Oh, God," Marcus whispered. "I had no idea." "Clearly." Finn leaned back in his chair. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Before Marcus could respond, his communication device chimed with an urgent message. He glanced at the display and felt his stomach drop. "Station administrator wants to see both me and Zira about the damaged equipment," he said. "This is going to be a disaster." Finn gave him a sympathetic pat on the shoulder. "Good luck." And Marcus? Maybe don't mention any other women while you're in there. Marcus arrived at Administrator Gorvin's office to find Zira already waiting. She stood at perfect attention, her hands clasped behind her back, staring straight ahead at the wall behind Gorvin's desk. She didn't acknowledge Marcus's arrival, though he was certain she had heard him enter. Gorvin, a portly human with graying hair and a perpetually harassed expression, looked up from his data pad with obvious irritation. "Chen, boss. Would either of you care to explain why I have a destroyed sensor array worth more than some planet's annual GDP? Equipment failure, sir," Zira said before Marcus could speak. The crystalline matrix experienced spontaneous resonance collapse. Gorvin's eyes narrowed. Funny, because the diagnostic shows impact damage. Unless the matrix grew a fist, someone hit it. A tense silence filled the room. Marcus glanced at Zira, whose expression remained perfectly controlled despite what he now recognized as the slight tension in her jaw that indicated suppressed emotion. "It was my fault, sir," Marcus said suddenly. "I was frustrated with the calibration settings and lost my temper." Both Zira and Gorvin stared at him in surprise. "You," Gorvin said skeptically, "have never damaged equipment in 3 years of service, Chen." Marcus shrugged, hoping he looked more casual than he felt. "First time for everything, sir. I'll accept whatever penalty is appropriate." Gorvin looked between them, clearly not buying the story but seemingly unwilling to push further without concrete evidence. "Fine. Cost comes out of your pay, and you're on double shifts until it's covered. Both of you are dismissed." As they exited the office, Zira finally spoke. "Why did you do that?" Her voice was softer than usual, with an undertone Marcus had never heard before. It sounded almost vulnerable. "Do what?" he asked, though he knew exactly what she meant. "Accept responsibility for damage you did not cause." Marcus stopped walking and turned to face her. For the first time since he had known her, Zira's perfect composure seemed slightly cracked. Her violet eyes held questions he was only beginning to understand. "Because it seemed like the right thing to do," he said simply. They stood in the corridor for a long moment, the soft hum of the station systems filling the silence between them. Finally, Zira spoke again. "Your actions are confusing, Marcus Chen." It was the first time she had ever used his first name. The way she pronounced it, with a slight emphasis on the hard consonants, made it sound almost like a different word entirely. "I've been told that before," he admitted. "But I'm beginning to think I'm not the only confusing one here." Something shifted in Zira's expression, surprise, perhaps, or recognition. "I do not understand your meaning." "Maybe we should talk," Marcus said, his heart racing. "Somewhere private." Zira studied him for what felt like an eternity. Then she gave a single, sharp nod. "My quarters." 20 minutes. Before Marcus could respond, she turned and walked away, her stride as purposeful as always. But now Marcus thought he detected something else in her movement, anticipation, perhaps, or nervousness. As he watched her disappear around a corner, Marcus realized that everything he thought he knew about his alien partner had just been turned upside down. The question was, what was he going to do about it? Hearts Across the Stars. Part 2, Cultural Revelations. 20 minutes felt like 20 hours as Marcus paced his small quarters, his mind racing through every interaction he'd had with Zira over the past 2 years. How had he missed what Finn claimed were obvious courtship signals? He thought back to the environmental controls she'd adjusted, claiming they were malfunctioning. The rare crystal samples she'd brought him, always with some technical justification. The way she seemed to appear whenever he was in any kind of uncomfortable situation. Marcus paused his pacing to look at himself in the mirror. His reflection showed a man of average height with dark hair that perpetually needed cutting and brown eyes that his sister had once described as earnest to a fault. He wasn't particularly handsome, wasn't particularly brave, and certainly wasn't the type to attract the attention of an imposing alien warrior. Yet according to Finn, that's exactly what had happened. When the time came, Marcus made his way through the station's corridors toward the cultural quarters, where non-human personnel were housed in environments adapted to their species' needs. The Kytherian section was kept at a higher temperature than the human areas, with lighting that mimicked their homeworld's binary star system. The air itself felt different here, heavier somehow, with a subtle metallic tang that spoke of the mineral-rich atmosphere of Zira's world. He found Zira's quarters and pressed the entry chime, his heart hammering against his ribs. The door slid open to reveal Zira, who had changed from her duty uniform into more casual attire, though, casual, for a Kytherian still looked remarkably formal to human eyes. She wore a close-fitting tunic of deep purple that complemented her pale violet eyes, and her silver hair hung loose around her shoulders rather than in its usual practical braid. "Enter," she said, stepping aside to allow him in. Marcus stepped into her quarters and immediately felt like he was visiting another world. The space was larger than standard human accommodations, with ceilings high enough to accommodate her impressive height. The furniture was sleek and angular, crafted from what appeared to be polished metal and dark stone. Crystalline formations, not unlike those they worked with in the power core, were arranged throughout the room, casting soft, multicolored light that danced across the walls. What struck Marcus most was how impeccably organized everything was. Books and data tablets were arranged with mathematical precision, personal items were displayed in perfect symmetry, and even the few decorative elements seemed to follow some invisible geometric pattern. It was beautiful in its way, but also somehow lonely. "Please, sit," Zira said, gesturing to one of two chairs positioned at a small table. Marcus sat, trying not to appear as nervous as he felt. Zira remained standing, her hands clasped behind her back in a pose that was becoming familiar. "You wish to speak about what happened today," Marcus began, then stopped. Where did he even start? "Zira, I think I may have misunderstood some things. About us. About your intentions." Something flickered across Zira's face, surprise, perhaps, or alarm. "My intentions are to perform my duties efficiently and maintain station security. Is that all?" Marcus asked gently. Zira's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "What else would there be?" Marcus took a deep breath. "Finn explained some things to me about Kytherian culture. About courtship customs." This time, Zira's reaction was unmistakable. Her violet eyes widened slightly, and a flush of deeper color spread across her dark cheeks. She turned away from him, moving to the large viewport that dominated one wall of her quarters. "Finn Reeves should concern himself with his own affairs," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "Should he?" Marcus stood and moved to join her at the window. Outside, the stars wheeled slowly as the station rotated, providing artificial gravity. "Because if he's right, then I've been incredibly blind to what you've been trying to tell me." Zira's reflection in the viewport showed a woman at war with herself. "It is irrelevant now." "Why is it irrelevant?" "Because I have demonstrated my unsuitability as a potential mate by losing control of my emotions." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "In my culture, emotional volatility is seen as a dangerous weakness. A mature Kytherian maintains perfect control at all times." Marcus felt a pang of sympathy. "So when you destroyed that sensor array, I revealed myself to be ruled by base instincts rather than logic and duty." Zira's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "I have dishonored myself and embarrassed you." "Embarrassed me?" Marcus couldn't keep the surprise out of his voice. "Zira, you didn't embarrass me. You confused me, sure, but you didn't embarrass me. You do not understand." Zira turned to face him, her expression pained. In Kytherian society, emotional outbursts are seen as signs of mental instability. A warrior who cannot control their feelings cannot be trusted with the safety of others. "I have proven myself unworthy of your consideration." The formal way she spoke, the rigid posture, the careful control, suddenly Marcus understood. This wasn't coldness or lack of emotion. This was a woman who had been taught that her feelings were dangerous, that showing them was shameful. What if I told you that your reaction today was the first time I realized you might feel something for me? Marcus said softly. What if I told you that for the past 2 years, I've been fascinated by you but convinced you saw me as nothing more than a work partner? Zira's eyes searched his face. You would speak falsely to spare my feelings. I would never lie to you about something this important. Marcus took a step closer, noting how she didn't retreat. Zira, humans express emotions very differently than Kytherians. We're actually encouraged to show our feelings, to talk about them. Your control, your discipline, I thought it meant you weren't interested in personal relationships at all. This is unexpected, Zira said slowly. I had assumed your lack of response to my courtship signals indicated rejection. What courtship signals? Marcus asked, then quickly added, I mean, Finn mentioned some things, but I'd like to hear it from you. Zira moved back to her chair and sat down, gesturing for Marcus to do the same. For the first time since he'd known her, she looked uncertain. Among my people, courtship is a serious matter, she began. It involves demonstrating one's ability to provide for and protect a potential mate. I have attempted to show these qualities. The environmental controls, Marcus said, understanding dawning. Ensuring your comfort and safety in our shared workspace, Zira confirmed. A fundamental duty of a potential mate. The crystal samples. Gifts that demonstrate my access to valuable resources and my desire to share them with you. A slight flush colored her cheeks again. Also, I had hoped you might find them aesthetically pleasing. Marcus thought of the beautiful crystal formations she'd brought him, which he'd appreciated for their technical properties but never considered as gifts. I did find them beautiful. I just didn't realize they were meant as gifts. And the incident with the Altarian trader was you protecting me. A mate must be willing to defend their chosen partner against all threats, Zira said, her voice taking on a formal tone. Your safety is more important than diplomatic niceties. Marcus felt warmth spreading through his chest. So when I mentioned being impressed with Tessa, you indicated preference for another female who demonstrated superior nurturing capabilities. Zira's voice was matter-of-fact, but Marcus could now hear the hurt beneath it. It was unexpected. I wasn't indicating preference, Marcus said quickly. I was just making conversation. Humans do that, we talk about other people without it meaning anything romantic. Zira considered this. Your species' communication methods are inefficient. Marcus couldn't help but smile. Yeah, we get that a lot. But Zira, if I had known you were interested, if I had understood what you were trying to tell me. What would you have done? She asked, her violet eyes intense. Marcus met her gaze steadily. I would have asked you to dinner. I would have told you that I think you're the most impressive person I've ever met. I would have admitted that I've been attracted to you since the day we started working together, but I was too intimidated to do anything about it. Zira's eyes widened. You find me attractive? Are you kidding? Marcus laughed, but not unkindly. Zira, you're brilliant, you're strong, you're beautiful in a way that makes me forget what I was doing every time you walk into a room. I just never thought someone like you would be interested in someone like me. Someone like you. Zira's head tilted slightly, a gesture Marcus was learning indicated confusion. Human. Ordinary. Not particularly brave or impressive or. You are incorrect, Zira interrupted. You demonstrate exceptional technical skill, unwavering dedication to your duties, and remarkable integrity. Today, you accepted punishment for actions you did not commit to protect me from consequences I had earned. These are not the actions of an ordinary person. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of mutual confession hanging in the air between them. Marcus felt as though he was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to jump into unknown territory. So, he said finally, what happens now? Now, Zira said, and for the first time since he'd known her, Marcus saw her smile, a real smile that transformed her entire face. You must understand that Kytherian courtship is not complete until both parties have formally declared their intentions. How do Kytherians formally declare their intentions? Zira stood and moved to stand directly in front of his chair. With absolute directness and unmistakable clarity. Before Marcus could ask what she meant, Zira reached down and took his face in her hands. Her touch was surprisingly gentle, her skin warm against his cheeks. Marcus Chen, she said, her voice soft but firm, I declare my intention to court you according to the customs of my people, with the hope that you will accept my suit and consider me as a potential life partner. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. The formal words, spoken in her melodious voice, sent a thrill through him that he hadn't expected. I accept, he said, his voice slightly hoarse. And I declare my intention to court you according to whatever customs you'll teach me, because I want to learn everything about you. Zira's smile widened, and she leaned down to press her lips to his. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, but when Marcus responded by placing his hands on her waist and pulling her closer, she deepened it. Her lips were warm and soft, and she tasted faintly of something sweet and exotic. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing slightly harder than normal. Zira's eyes held a warmth Marcus had never seen before, and her carefully maintained composure had given way to something more natural and relaxed. That, she said, is how humans seal agreements, is it not? Marcus laughed. Among other things, yes. I find your customs agreeable, Zira said, settling onto the arm of his chair so she could remain close to him. I'm looking forward to learning more about yours, Marcus replied, reaching up to touch her face. Though I have to ask, what made you interested in me in the first place? I mean, you could have your pick of anyone on this station. Zira's expression grew thoughtful. You treat me as an equal, not as a curiosity or a threat. You listen when I speak, you value my opinions, and you never make me feel as though I must choose between being Kytherian and being accepted. She paused. Also, you have very kind eyes. Marcus felt warmth spread through his chest. Kind eyes? Windows to the soul, as your people say. Yours show compassion, intelligence, and honesty. These are qualities highly valued in Kytherian culture. They talked for another hour, sharing stories about their respective homeworlds, their families, their hopes for the future. Marcus learned that Zira had been the youngest member of her family ever to earn a position in the interstellar security forces, and that she had volunteered for the Nexus station assignment specifically because she wanted to experience other cultures. Zira learned that Marcus had grown up on a farming colony where fixing things was a necessity, not just a job, and that he had always been fascinated by the technology that made interstellar civilization possible. As the evening wore on, Marcus found himself relaxing completely for the first time in years. Zira's formal demeanor gave way to something warmer and more natural, and he discovered that she had a subtle sense of humor and a genuine curiosity about human customs that was both endearing and flattering. It was Zira who finally noticed the time. You should return to your quarters, she said reluctantly. We both have early shifts tomorrow. Marcus nodded, though he was reluctant to leave. This has been wonderful. Thank you for trusting me with this. Thank you for accepting my suit, Zira replied formally, then added with a softer smile, and for teaching me that not all emotional displays are signs of weakness. As Marcus stood to leave, he paused at the door. Zira. Tomorrow, when we're working together, how do we? I mean, what's appropriate? We will be professional during duty hours, she said. But perhaps afterward, you might join me for the evening meal? I would like to learn more about human courtship customs. I'd like that very much, Marcus said, then hesitated. And Zira? For what it's worth, I think you're perfect exactly as you are. Don't ever think you need to change who you are to be worthy of someone's attention. The smile she gave him was radiant. Sleep well, Marcus Chen. As Marcus made his way back to his quarters, he felt as though he was walking on air. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as they navigated this new relationship, but for the first time in years, he was looking forward to the future with genuine excitement. Behind him, though he didn't know it, Zira stood at her viewport watching his reflection disappear down the corridor, a hand pressed to her lips where she could still feel the warmth of his kiss. For the first time since arriving at Nexus Station, she felt truly at home. The next morning brought a subtle but profound shift in the dynamic between Marcus and Zira. As promised, they maintained complete professionalism during their shift, but Marcus found himself acutely aware of every small interaction, the way Zira's fingers brushed his when she handed him a tool, the almost imperceptible softening in her voice when she spoke to him, the fact that she seemed to find reasons to work closer to him than strictly necessary. Primary matrix alignment is optimal, Zira reported, her tone crisp and professional, but Marcus caught the tiny smile that played at the corners of her mouth. Confirmed, Marcus replied, then added quietly, nice work, partner. The word partner seemed to hang in the air between them, carrying new weight and meaning. Zira's violet eyes met his for just a moment longer than necessary before she turned back to her console, but that brief connection sent warmth spreading through Marcus's chest. Their shift proceeded smoothly until mid-afternoon, when the station's head of botanical research, Dr. Westbrook, arrived at their section with a visitor in tow. Marcus recognized her immediately as Tessa Nakamura, the botanist whose innocent mention had triggered yesterday's crisis. Tessa was an attractive woman in her early 30s, with auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and bright green eyes that held genuine enthusiasm for her work. She wore the standard-issue jumpsuit of the research division, but somehow managed to make it look effortlessly stylish. Marcus had to admit that his comment about her yesterday hadn't been entirely professional. She was objectively beautiful, and her revolutionary work with the hydroponic systems had impressed everyone on the station. Chen, boss, Dr. Westbrook called out. I'd like you to meet Dr. Nakamura. She's been working on integrating some crystalline resonance technology into her growing systems, and I thought you might be able to provide some technical insight. Marcus felt Zira stiffen slightly beside him, though her expression remained perfectly neutral. He realized this was a test of sorts. How would they handle this situation now that everything had changed between them? Dr. Nakamura, Marcus said professionally, extending his hand. I've heard excellent things about your work with the hydroponic systems. Tessa smiled warmly as she shook his hand. Thank you. And please, call me Tessa. I'm hoping you can help me understand how to safely integrate low-level crystalline resonance into my growing chambers without interfering with the station's main power grid. That's definitely doable, Marcus replied, then gestured to his partner. This is Zira Voss, our security specialist and the station's expert on crystalline technology integration. If anyone can help you design a safe system, it's her. Zira stepped forward, and Marcus watched as she seemed to evaluate Tessa with the same intensity she brought to everything else. Dr. Nakamura. Your work with nutrient optimization has been impressive. Thank you, Tessa said, seemingly unaware of the careful assessment she was receiving. I have to admit, I'm a bit nervous about working with crystalline technology. I've heard it can be quite dangerous if not handled properly. In untrained hands, yes, Zira said. However, with proper protocols and understanding of the resonance patterns, it can be quite safe. Marcus and I have developed several successful integration procedures. Marcus noticed the subtle emphasis Zira placed on Marcus and I, and felt a surge of affection for her. She was making it clear, in her own way, that they were a team. For the next hour, they worked with Tessa to design a miniature crystalline resonance system that could enhance plant growth without compromising station security. Marcus found himself impressed not just by Tessa's botanical knowledge, but by her quick grasp of the technical concepts they were explaining. She asked intelligent questions and offered innovative solutions to potential problems. What struck him most, however, was how Zira gradually warmed to the other woman. As they worked together, sharing expertise and brainstorming solutions, Zira's initial wariness gave way to what looked like genuine respect. By the end of the consultation, she was offering to personally oversee the installation of the new system to ensure it met all safety protocols. Thank you both so much, Tessa said as they concluded their planning session. This is going to revolutionize food production throughout the outer colonies. I can't wait to see the results. After Tessa and Dr. Westbrook left, Marcus and Zira worked in comfortable silence for several minutes. Finally, Marcus couldn't contain his curiosity any longer. That went well, he said carefully. Dr. Nakamura is more competent than I initially assessed, Zira replied, her tone neutral but not hostile. She's also very attractive, Marcus said, watching Zira's reaction carefully. Zira's hand stilled on her console for just a moment. Physical attractiveness is irrelevant to professional competence. True, Marcus agreed. But I noticed you seemed more relaxed with her by the end than you were at the beginning. Zira turned to face him fully, her violet eyes searching his face. You are testing me. Maybe a little, Marcus admitted. I wanted to see how you'd react to her now that things have changed between us. And what did you observe? Marcus stepped closer to her, close enough that he could see the flecks of silver in her violet eyes. I observed that you're confident enough in yourself and in what's happening between us that you don't see other women as threats. I observed that you judge people on their merits, not on whether they might be competition. And I observed that you're even more amazing than I thought you were yesterday. A flush of deeper color spread across Zira's dark cheeks. Your words are pleasing. Just the truth, Marcus said softly. Zira, I need you to know something. Yes, Tessa is attractive. Yes, she's brilliant at what she does. But she's not you. She doesn't have your strength, your integrity, your incredible combination of power and grace. She doesn't make my heart race just by walking into a room. Zira's breath caught slightly. You speak very persuasively, Marcus Chen. I speak honestly, he corrected. And I'm looking forward to dinner tonight, if the offer still stands. It does, Zira said, and this time she didn't hide her smile. I have prepared a meal that incorporates both Kytherian and human nutritional preferences. You cooked? Marcus asked, touched by the gesture. Cooking is considered an essential courtship skill among my people, Zira explained. The ability to nourish one's chosen partner is. Her words were cut off by the sudden blaring of emergency alarms throughout the station. Red lights began flashing, and the automated emergency system crackled to life. Warning, critical instability detected in primary crystalline matrix. All personnel implement emergency protocols immediately. This is not a drill. Marcus and Zira exchanged a look of instant understanding and concern. The primary crystalline matrix was the heart of the station's power system. If it became unstable, the resulting energy discharge could destroy the entire facility and everyone aboard. Section 7, Marcus said, already moving toward the emergency equipment lockers. That's where the primary matrix is housed. Evacuation protocols call for all non-essential personnel to report to the emergency shuttles, Zira said, but she was also moving toward the equipment rather than the exits. Are you essential personnel? Marcus asked, pulling on his emergency gear. Where you go, I go, Zira replied simply, and the matter-of-fact way she said it sent warmth through Marcus despite the crisis. They ran through the corridors as other personnel streamed past them in the opposite direction, heading for the evacuation points. The emergency lighting cast everything in harsh red, and the constant wail of alarms made communication difficult. Station Administrator Gorvin stood at the entrance to Section 7, directing the evacuation efforts. When he saw Marcus and Zira approaching, his expression shifted from relief to resignation. Thank God, he said. Chen, you're the only one who knows those systems well enough to attempt a manual shutdown. But I have to tell you, the radiation levels in there are already approaching dangerous levels. How long do we have? Marcus asked, checking his emergency equipment. Maybe 20 minutes before the matrix reaches critical cascade, Gorvin replied grimly. After that, the energy release will make the Hiroshima bomb look like a firecracker. Then we better get started, Marcus said, moving toward the sealed entrance to Section 7. Chen, Gorvin called after him. The safety protocols only provide protection for one person. You can't both go in there. Marcus stopped and turned to look at Zira, who stood behind him with her own emergency gear. The implications of Gorvin's words hung heavy in the air between them. I'm going, Marcus said firmly. I know the systems better than anyone. I am accompanying you, Zira stated with equal firmness. Zira, no. The radiation will affect me less severely than it will affect you, she interrupted. Kytherian physiology is more resistant to energy-based radiation than human physiology. Logic dictates that I should be the one to enter the contaminated area. Logic also dictates that you don't know the shutdown procedures, Marcus countered. Then you will teach me, Zira said, her tone brooking no argument. We will go together, or we will not go at all. Gorvin looked between them with a mixture of exasperation and admiration. This is not the time for romantic gestures, people. The entire station is at risk. This is not a romantic gesture, Zira said coldly, her voice carrying the authority that made her so effective in security situations. This is tactical necessity. Marcus requires backup in case he becomes incapacitated by radiation exposure. I am the most qualified person on this station to provide that backup. Marcus realized she was right, but the thought of exposing her to danger made his chest tight with fear. Zira. She stepped close to him and placed a hand on his chest, her touch gentle but firm. Marcus, yesterday you protected me from consequences I had earned. Today, allow me to protect you from consequences neither of us deserves. Looking into her eyes, Marcus saw not just determination but something deeper, complete trust and absolute commitment. This was what partnership meant to her, what choosing him meant. She wasn't going to let him face this danger alone, and he realized that trying to stop her would be both futile and insulting to everything she was. Okay, he said, covering her hand with his. But we do this my way, following safety protocols exactly. Agreed, Zira said. They sealed themselves into the emergency protection suits and entered Section 7 together. The air inside shimmered with energy distortion, and Marcus's radiation detector immediately began clicking ominously. The primary crystalline matrix, normally a thing of beauty with its complex geometric patterns and soft, pulsing light, now blazed with chaotic energy that hurt to look at directly. The resonance frequency is completely unstable, Marcus said, studying the readings on his portable diagnostic unit. The matrix is trying to discharge all its stored energy at once. Can you recalibrate it? Zira asked, her voice slightly distorted by the suit's communication system. Maybe. I need to manually reset the harmonic stabilizers, but they're located right next to the matrix itself. The radiation exposure is going to be intense. Then we work quickly, Zira said, moving to his side. Tell me what to do. For the next 15 minutes, they worked with desperate efficiency. Marcus guided Zira through the complex shutdown procedures while monitoring radiation levels and adjusting the delicate controls that govern the matrix's energy output. She proved to be an excellent student, her natural precision and steady hands making her invaluable in the delicate work. Harmonic Stabilizer 7 is responding, Marcus reported, sweat beading on his forehead despite the suit's cooling system. But Stabilizer 12 is still locked in cascade mode. I can reach it, Zira said, pointing to a control panel that was positioned awkwardly behind a mass of crystalline formations. No, the radiation exposure there is. Marcus, Zira interrupted, her violet eyes meeting his through their helmet visors. Trust me. He did trust her, completely. Rotate the control counterclockwise exactly 47 degrees. No more, no less. Zira nodded and moved to the dangerous position. Marcus watched anxiously as she worked, his heart pounding with fear for her safety. Her movements were precise and confident, every gesture economical and sure. Stabilizer 12 responding, she reported. Energy levels decreasing. That's it. Marcus said, checking his readings. The cascade is breaking up. We did it. They stood together in the slowly dimming light of the crystalline matrix, both breathing hard from stress and relief. The radiation detectors gradually slowed their ominous clicking as the energy levels returned to normal parameters. We should exit before the residual radiation exposure becomes dangerous, Zira said practically, but Marcus could hear the smile in her voice. As they emerged from Section 7, they were greeted by cheers from the assembled station personnel. Administrator Gorvin looked both relieved and impressed. "Outstanding work, both of you," he said. "I'll be recommending both of you for commendations." "Just doing our jobs, sir," Marcus replied, but he felt a surge of pride at the recognition. As the crowd dispersed and the emergency protocols were stood down, Marcus and Zira made their way back to their section to complete the post-crisis equipment checks. The adrenaline of the emergency was wearing off, leaving Marcus feeling both exhausted and exhilarated. "That was incredible," he said as they walked. "We made a good team in there." "We did," Zira agreed. "Though I must admit, I was concerned about your safety throughout the procedure." Marcus stopped walking and turned to face her. "You were worried about me?" "Zira, you were the one in the most dangerous position." "Yes, but you are." She paused, seeming to search for the right words. "You are precious to me, Marcus Chen. The thought of losing you was unacceptable." The simple honesty of her words hit Marcus like a physical blow. This amazing, strong, incredible woman cared about him enough to risk her life for him, and she was calling him precious. "Zira," he said softly, reaching out to take her hands. "I feel the same way about you. When I saw you moving into that radiation field, I was terrified. Not of dying, but of losing you before I'd had the chance to really know you." She stepped closer to him, her hands tightening on his. "We have that chance now." "Yes, we do," Marcus agreed. "And I don't want to waste a moment of it." They stood in the corridor, holding hands and looking into each other's eyes, both of them feeling the weight of what they had just shared. It was more than just surviving a crisis together, it was the recognition that they truly were partners, in every sense of the word. "I believe," Zira said quietly, "that dinner can wait." "What did you have in mind?" Marcus asked, his heart racing at the intensity in her eyes. "I would like to show you more of Kytherian courtship customs," she said, her voice carrying a new warmth that made Marcus's pulse quicken. "Specifically, the customs involving physical expressions of affection and commitment." Marcus felt heat spread through his chest and down into his stomach. "I would like that very much." "Then come," Zira said, leading him toward her quarters. "It is time for the next phase of our courtship to begin." As they walked together toward an uncertain but wonderful future, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed in just 2 days. He had gained not just a romantic partner, but a true companion, someone who would stand with him against any danger, who valued him for who he was, and who challenged him to be better than he had ever thought possible. Behind them, the crystalline matrix hummed quietly in its housing, its energy once again flowing in perfect harmony. Like Marcus and Zira themselves, it had found its proper resonance, a frequency that would sustain them both for whatever challenges lay ahead. The stars wheeled slowly outside the station's viewports, witness to a love that transcended species, culture, and the vast distances between worlds. In the cosmic dance of the universe, 2 hearts had found their perfect orbit around each other, and nothing would ever be the same. The end. Hearts Across the Stars is a complete story of love conquering cultural barriers, trust overcoming fear, and 2 souls finding their perfect match across the vastness of space. Marcus and Zira's journey from misunderstanding to partnership shows that sometimes the most profound connections happen when we're brave enough to be vulnerable with someone who sees our true worth. Their story reminds us that love isn't just about attraction, it's about respect, understanding, and the willingness to stand together against whatever challenges life might bring. In the end, they found not just romance, but a partnership that would sustain them through anything the universe could offer. The crystalline matrices weren't the only things that found their perfect harmonic resonance that day. 2 hearts, 2 souls, 2 lives aligned in perfect synchronization, ready to face the future as one.